Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. Today, we'll be delving into a case that shocked both China and Singapore. Hoang Na, an adorable 8-year-old girl, mysteriously disappeared on the island nation. After her disappearance, thousands of people took part in one of the largest search efforts ever seen, and when the truth was finally revealed, the public was outraged by what the perpetrator had done. To express their sorrow, many people voluntarily attended her funeral, sending her favorite candy as a tribute. However, as the investigation unfolded, a surprising number of people began to sympathize with the perpetrator in a baffling turn of events. So, what was the final truth? We'll take you back to Singapore in 2004 to uncover what really happened. Singapore has long been regarded as an exceptionally clean, civilized country with the highest security standards in the region. But despite its safety, Hoang Na, a young Chinese immigrant just 8 years old, suddenly disappeared, causing a media frenzy. Hoang Na was born on September 26, 1996, into a modest family in China who worked hard to make ends meet. However, the reality was that Hoang Na's family consisted only of her mother, as her father had left them to work illegally in Singapore as a fruit packer before she was born. During his time away, Hoang Na's father started an affair with another woman, ultimately leading to a divorce. A few years later, her mother found a new husband, and Hoang Na had a younger half-sibling. By the time Hoang Na was in the early years of elementary school, Singapore had introduced policies to support immigration in order to attract talent. Not wanting to miss out on the opportunity for a better education for her daughter, Hoang Na's mother, Hoang Yang, discussed with her husband and agreed to send Hoang Na to Singapore to study. This decision, however, cost the family a significant amount of money and effort. So, at just 7 years old, Hoang Na followed her mother's arrangement and moved nearly 3,100 miles away from her hometown in Fujian to Singapore, where she enrolled at Jin Tai Primary School, one of the most expensive schools in Singapore at the time. Of course, no mother would feel comfortable letting her child live alone in a foreign place, so Hoang Na's mother decided to stay with her and occasionally flew back to Fujian to care for her younger child with her second husband. In this new country, Hoang Na's mother made a living by opening a produce stall at a market near her daughter's school, and she also rented the space above the stall where the two could rest when needed. As her mother began selling produce, the people in the market and regular customers grew fond of the cheerful 7-year-old, always full of energy and with a sweet smile on her face. Knowing that her family situation wasn't as fortunate as many of her classmates, Hoang Na was exceptionally understanding and well-behaved. She never asked her mother for anything and became a source of emotional support, giving her mother the motivation to keep working. When they had free time to spend together, Hoang Na would often tell her mother, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll study hard and become a doctor so I can earn lots of money and take care of you. Won't have to work so hard anymore." But whether it was becoming a doctor or anything else, Hoang Na would never have the chance to achieve her dreams. On September 27, 2004, after celebrating a cozy birthday with Hoang Na, her mother, Hoang Yang, packed her bags for a 2-week trip back to Fujian to visit her younger child. During this time, Hoang Na had to stay behind in Singapore to avoid missing school. Given Hoang Na's unique situation, with her mother frequently flying between Singapore and Fujian, it was quite normal for her to take care of herself. She handled her own meals, bathed at public bathhouses, and even flew alone back home for summer vacations. Everyone who knew the mother and daughter duo admired the independence and maturity of this 8-year-old girl. So, when her mother left for this trip, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for the two of them. Before leaving, Hoang Na's mother entrusted her daughter's care to a roommate named Luan and gave her 100 Singapore dollars to manage her own expenses during the 2 short weeks. On October 10th, nearly 2 weeks after her mother had left, Hoang Na sweetly told her aunt, Li Shukan, that she wanted to call her mom. Since this was a common request whenever Hoang Na missed her mother, her aunt had no concerns about letting her go alone. Around 1:30 p.m., after informing her aunt, Hoang Na quickly went to the nearby payphone to call her mother. She skillfully dialed the number, and as soon as she heard her mother's voice on the other end, she excitedly began sharing everything that had happened in the days since her mother had left. She also mentioned that she needed an electronic English dictionary and a new pair of sandals since her current ones were worn out. Her mother cheerfully agreed to buy these things for her and promised to bring them when she returned to Singapore. She also advised Hoang Na to be patient for a few more days, as her work at home wasn't finished, and the trip might be extended. After a brief 6-minute phone call, Hoang Na seemed a little sad as she missed her mother terribly. As for her mother, Heng Shiying, if she had known this would be the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice, she might have talked to her for a little longer. By around 2:30 p.m. an hour had passed, and Hoang Na still hadn't returned. Lewin began to feel a sense of unease. How could making a phone call take so long? A gut feeling told her something was wrong. She immediately went to the nearby payphone where Hoang Na had called her mother, but the little girl was nowhere to be found. A wave of fear slowly began to wash over Lewin, filling her mind with dread. She frantically searched everywhere, scouring the market where Hoang Na's mother sold produce, and even went to her school, but there was no trace of the girl. Unable to bear the anxiety any longer, Lewin sought help from friends and acquaintances. More than 20 people joined the search, combing through nearby areas, but there was still no sign of her. Exhausted, by 10 p.m., Lewin and the others finally turned to the police for help and informed Hoang Na's mother in Fujian immediately. Heng Shiying dropped everything at home and caught the earliest flight back to Singapore to search for her eldest daughter. Once the police took on the case, they didn't waste a second, launching an investigation and interviewing those involved. According to reports, the last time Hoang Na was seen was when she left home to make the phone call. She was wearing a jacket, blue shorts, and had short dark hair. Additionally, it was confirmed that Hoang Na was just an 8-year-old girl with a sweet, cheerful personality. Her mother, since arriving in Singapore, hadn't had any conflicts with anyone, not even minor disagreements. Both mother and daughter were remembered by others as kind, gentle, and friendly, so the police quickly ruled out the possibility of her disappearance being an act of revenge. Furthermore, Singapore is very small, with a total area of only about 270 square miles, and Hoang Na was very familiar with the surroundings where she lived, making it highly unlikely that she got lost. After eliminating all other possibilities, only one scenario remained the most dreaded one. Hoang Na had been kidnapped. With the investigation strategy quickly established, the police began focusing on the wholesale market where Hoang's mother worked, questioning everyone who was present that day. It wasn't long before they got their first lead on the missing girl. Lin, an employee at a cafe in the plaza near the wholesale market, told the police that she had seen Hoang Na that afternoon. The girl was wearing a jacket and blue shorts but wasn't wearing any shoes. Miss Lin said she asked Hoang Na why she wasn't wearing shoes, but the girl didn't answer. She just smiled sweetly and skipped away. Several other people in the market also reported seeing Hoang Na that afternoon. They said she had been with a man they were all familiar with. They agreed he was a young man, only in his early 20s, who wasn't particularly bright and worked a simple job packing goods. He frequently spent time with Hoang and was very fond of her, treating her like his little niece. Following these leads from the market vendors, the police quickly found the young man, who was identified as Tuk Lenha, a worker who packed goods at the market. When the police informed him they were questioning him about the disappearance of Hoang Na on October 10th, Tuk Lenha responded with genuine surprise. He admitted that he had seen her that day and had even given her to mangoes, telling her not to wander around and to go straight home. Given his cooperative and honest demeanor, showing no signs of deception, the police gradually dismissed their suspicions and allowed him to go home. During this time, while the police were actively investigating, Hoang Na's mother wasn't sitting idle either. 4 days after arriving on October 12th, she printed stacks of flyers with her daughter's face on them, handing them to every passerby on the street, constantly asking if anyone had seen or heard about her daughter. But that wasn't all. Heng Shiying didn't allow herself even a moment of rest. She searched construction sites and water pipes tirelessly, walking from dawn until long past midnight every day, never stopping, fueled by the faint hope that she might find her daughter and bring her home. During those relentless days of searching, a niece called Heng Shiying and told her about a strange dream she had. Hoang Na is trapped on a mountain. Although it was only a spiritual or symbolic occurrence, and often these things have no real-world significance, in her desperate state, Hoang Na's mother couldn't dismiss any possibility. For many days, despite being physically and emotionally exhausted, she carried her daughter's picture and her favorite teddy bear, hiking up the tallest mountains in search of her child. During this period, Heng Shiying was no longer alone in her search. Reporters followed her, but so did strangers touched by the story of the mother and daughter. They were willing to scour all of Singapore to help. At that point, nearly the entire country was involved in a large-scale search for Hoang Na, attracting everyone from business people to retirees, taxi drivers, and many others. One person even offered a reward of $10,000 Singapore dollars for any leads, and another added an additional $5,000 Singapore dollars. Of course, the search teams distributed news photos and flyers about the girl's mysterious disappearance far and wide. The search grew so large that even Singapore's neighboring country, Malaysia, got involved. Some Malaysians joined the search, and a few restaurants near the Singapore border hung posters urging people to look for Hoang Na. In just a few days, the number of people participating in the search skyrocketed. A total of 70,000 flyers were printed and distributed, but despite all efforts, there was no sign of Hoang Na. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. At this point, everything seemed to take a sudden turn when the police decided to reinvestigate, examining all leads and individuals involved, including Tuk Lang Ha. When they brought him in for a second round of questioning, his story changed entirely, raising the police's suspicions. In his second statement, he claimed, "I know where Hoang Na is. She was kidnapped by a group of 3 or 4 Chinese men who threatened her." He explained that this was a result of unresolved conflicts that Hoang Na's mother had with others at the market, leading to her daughter's abduction as an act of revenge. After providing this information, Tuk Lang Ha even volunteered to help the police by using his connections to contact the group and negotiate Hoang Na's release. However, he explained that since he was summoned to the police station too early, he didn't have his phone and needed to return home to retrieve it. Though skeptical, the police agreed and assigned 2 officers to escort him back to his home. After retrieving his phone, they quickly placed him in a car to return to the station for a lie detector test. But at that very moment, something happened that was beyond the police's control. Tuk Lang Ha took advantage of the police's trust. While being escorted, he requested a stop at a restaurant on Pasir Panjang Road, claiming he was hungry. After pretending to go to the restroom, he slipped away unnoticed. When the police realized he hadn't come out for a long time, they panicked and understood that Tuk Lang Ha had built their trust only to use it as a means for his escape. Naturally, when a suspect flees during transport, the police must immediately give chase and call for backup to set up a perimeter as quickly as possible. The same happened with Tuk Lang Ha. However, no matter how many officers they mobilized or how intensively they searched, they couldn't catch him. Tuk Lang Ha seemed to have vanished without a trace. The obvious question at this point was, where had he gone, and why did he run? Before we find out what happened to him, let's take a step back and explore who Tuk Lang Ha really was. Tuk Lang Ha was born on December 16, 1981, in Penang, Malaysia. He was the second of 4 children in a financially struggling family. He lived in Malaysia with his dad. Better job opportunities, however, things didn't go as planned. Without any qualifications, Tuk Lang Ha could only find manual labor jobs. After some time in Singapore, he met a Chinese-Indonesian woman, and they quickly got married and had a son together. It was during this time that Hoang Na and her mother met Tuk Lang Ha when they moved to Singapore. They rented a small room in the same building where Tuk Lang Ha lived. From then on, Tuk Lang Ha and Hoang Na became familiar with each other, developing a close bond, as if they were uncle and niece. He would often ride his motorcycle to pick Hoang Na up, taking her out for fun, buying her small gifts, and treating her to meals at various restaurants in Singapore. Because of this, it wasn't just Hoang Na who let her guard down, her mother did too. She trusted and liked Tuk Lang Ha. When the police informed her that he was the prime suspect in her daughter's disappearance, she couldn't believe her ears. She kept saying, "No, it can't be him," and repeatedly asked the police if there had been a mistake. However, the Singapore police were confident in their suspicions, and after Tuk Lang Ha's unexpected escape, their doubts were only further reinforced. Let's take a moment to consider the geography of Singapore at the time of Tuk Lang Ha's escape. Singapore is the smallest country in Southeast Asia, and by land, the only place he could have fled to was Malaysia, his home country. As soon as Tuk Lang Ha's escape was discovered, the Singapore police contacted Malaysian authorities for assistance in tracking him down. The Malaysian police reached out to all of Tuk Lang Ha's family members in Malaysia, including his parents and siblings. Tuk Langho's father, who was 62 years old at the time, told the police very honestly that he had received a phone call from his second son after his escape. In that brief call, Tuk Langho said, "I didn't kidnap Hoang Na. I ran away because I couldn't handle the pressure from the police." When the police arrived at their home, even Tuk Langho's older brother couldn't believe his brother was the prime suspect in such a horrific crime. To him, Tuk Langho was a shy person who never even had the nerve to ask for a loan, and he had never been involved in a fight. For someone like that, the idea of kidnapping a child sounded like a far-fetched story. As for the Singapore police, they quickly reached out to Tuk Langho's wife, who was still living in Singapore. She provided the police with similar information to what his father had told Malaysian authorities. Tuk Langho had called her as well, insisting he hadn't kidnapped the girl. However, in his call to his wife, he gave one crucial piece of information. After escaping from the police, he had taken a taxi to the border between Singapore and Malaysia, then continued by bus to Johor, Malaysia. Despite his family's hopes that he would explain what was happening, and even with the cooperation between the two neighboring countries, no further progress seemed to be made. That is, until October 30th, 10 days after his last interrogation and 20 days after the crime, when he voluntarily turned himself into the police in Penang, Malaysia. After receiving the news from Malaysia that Tuk Langho had surrendered and was in custody, Singapore police immediately sent an investigative team to bring him back for further questioning. Realizing he had no way out, Tuk Langho confessed to everything that had happened. On October 31st, a team of over 20 investigators led Tuk Langho to the location where he claimed he had disposed of Hoang Na's body on a hill in Telok Blangah Hill Park, just about a 10-minute drive from the wholesale market where her mother worked. After about 30 minutes of searching the area that Tuk Langho had pointed out, officers noticed a foul smell near a withered bush. Upon digging into the shallow soil, they uncovered a cardboard box tightly sealed with tape. Some thick, oily liquid was seeping from the edges and corners of the box, but no other signs were found, indicating that this was just the burial site and not the location of the crime. The box was immediately taken to the forensic center for examination. Forensic experts determined that it was a packing box taken from the place where Tuk Langho worked. Inside the cardboard box were 9 layers of plastic. After peeling away all the material, they found the severely decomposed and unrecognizable body of a small girl, whom we all knew for certain was Hoang Na. Following standard procedure, the forensics team conducted a DNA comparison with Hoang Na's mother, Hang Shuang, to confirm the identity. The heartbreaking results showed that the body was indeed Hoang Na, the little girl they had been searching for all this time. While the forensic team worked on their final report, the police didn't sit idle by. During one interrogation, Tuk Langho gave a statement claiming that Hoang Na's death was entirely accidental. He said they had been playing hide-and-seek in the warehouse, but instead of a regular game, he tied her hands and feet before hiding. Tuk Langho explained, "I just wanted to make the game more fun by having her untie herself before she could come find me." However, the physical evidence told a different story. The forensic doctors spoke on behalf of the victim. Their report showed that the direct cause of Hoang Na's death was acute airway obstruction. The problem, however, was that since Hoang Na had been attacked so long ago and her body was wrapped in 9 layers of plastic bags, it was impossible to determine exactly when the suffocation occurred. Aside from the acute airway obstruction, her face also showed signs of trauma of various degrees to the head, particularly the back of her skull. Due to the body being buried in damp soil for so long, it was difficult to determine which injuries were caused by specific blows. Additionally, when the medical team examined her gastrointestinal tract to estimate the time of death, they found partially digested mangoes in her stomach. There was also evidence of vomit in her mouth, and her rectal area contained fecal matter. Coupled with Tuk Langho's statement that he saw her experiencing convulsions, there were 2 possible explanations for her condition: either she suffered an epileptic seizure, or the convulsions were the result of external trauma. But that wasn't all. What made this case even more perplexing was that when Hoang Na's body was found, she wasn't wearing any clothes in the cardboard box. Additionally, her private area showed clear signs of assault, with visible scratches and bleeding. It became evident that Tuk Langho was not particularly intelligent or skilled in evading suspicion as he continued to deny his crime during police interviews. In one recorded statement, he claimed that after tying Hoang Na up in the room and hiding, he heard a loud thud from where she was tied. When he rushed back into the room, she began vomiting blood, having convulsions, and losing control of her bodily functions. Tuk Langha explained that he panicked. His mind went blank, and although he wanted to untie her, he was unable to do so at that moment. He recalled a first aid technique he had seen online, which suggested applying pressure to the side of the neck in such situations. He immediately attempted this. When using his hands didn't work, he said he laid her on her side and used his foot to press on her neck. Unfortunately, Hoang Na did not survive. Continuing his statement, Tuk Langha tried to explain the injuries in her private area. According to him, after his misguided attempts at first aid failed, he saw that things were getting worse. He removed her jacket and placed it over her face to cover her wide-open, clouded eyes in an attempt to ease his fear. Though he couldn't explain why he removed her pants, Tuk Langha claimed that he was patting her back with his right hand, while his left hand somehow ended up in an area he couldn't identify as either her genital or anal region. All he knew was that when he withdrew his hand, there was significant bleeding from her lower body. Regarding the location where Tuk Langha and Hoang Na played hide and seek, police followed his testimony and went to a warehouse divided into 3 rooms on the 15th floor of the wholesale market where her mother worked. In this room, police found Hoang Na's DNA, including hair and blood, as well as cigarette butts with Tuk Langha's saliva and adhesive tape containing his fingerprints. Additionally, there were fibers from the clothes both the perpetrator and the victim were wearing that day, confirming that this was the crime scene. When the case went to trial at Singapore's High Court on July 11, 2005, the prosecution charged Tuk Langha with murder. They presented evidence from 76 witnesses, a variety of physical evidence, and a video reenactment in which Tuk Langha demonstrated the events. Based on forensic reports, the prosecution summarized the case as follows. At around 1:40 p.m. on October 10, 2004, Tuk Langha lured Hoang Na into the warehouse on the 15th floor of Block 13 at the wholesale market under the pretense of playing hide and seek. Once inside, after eating mangoes, Hoang was stripped of her clothes, tied up with rope, and sexually assaulted. To silence her, the defendant suffocated her by pressing his hands over her mouth and nose until she went limp and lifeless. He then stomped and kicked her head multiple times to ensure she was no longer able to resist. Next, he wrapped her body in 9 layers of plastic bags, placed it inside a cardboard box, and sealed it with tape. After completing the packaging, around 5:30 p.m. he borrowed a colleague's motorcycle, returned to his apartment, and went about his day as usual. It wasn't until about 8 p.m. that he took the box containing Hoang Na's body to Telok Blangah Hill Park, where he hastily buried it. He returned the motorcycle to his colleague around 9 p.m. Faced with these charges, Tuk Langha remained silent throughout the trial. However, his lawyer pointed out to arguments that could either prove his innocence or at least reduce his sentence. According to the defense attorney, while the prosecution had evidence, witnesses, and the defendant's own statements, there was no direct proof that Tuk Langha was the one who caused Hoang Na to stop breathing. To clarify further, as mentioned earlier, it could not be conclusively determined whether Hoang's airway obstruction was due to being suffocated by having her mouth and nose covered or from inhaling vomit during a seizure. Even the cause of the seizure itself could not be definitively attributed to external trauma or an epileptic episode, as seizures can sometimes occur spontaneously, even if the family had no history of epilepsy. Additionally, Tuk Langha's defense team of 5 lawyers brought in a psychiatrist to testify about his mental instability. According to this psychiatrist, Tuk Langha exhibited symptoms consistent with schizophrenia, such as a lack of emotional response to Hoang Na's death and delusional thoughts, like inventing a story about 3 Chinese men kidnapping the victim. Moreover, when his IQ was tested, Tuk Langha's score was only 76, significantly lower than the average IQ in Malaysia at the time, about 92, in Singapore about 105, and even lower than the global average IQ in 2004, which was around 83. However, bringing in a psychiatrist didn't seem to help the defense. The prosecution quickly countered, stating that while Tuk Langha's IQ appeared to be well below average, mental impairment is typically only recognized when the IQ is below 70. Furthermore, neither he nor his family had any history of mental illness. The prosecution also pointed out that Tuk Langha's behavior before and after the crime showed no noticeable differences indicating that he had a very steady psychological state. Another critical point was how he disposed of evidence to cover up his crime. Instead of discarding Hoang Na's clothes in the market trash bins, he chose to dispose of them in a location without cameras, showing calculated effort in concealing his actions. After wrapping the victim in 9 layers of plastic bags and placing her in a cardboard box, Tuk Lang Hao remained calm enough to carefully seal the box with tape. When the police questioned him for the first time, he was fully aware that his actions were wrong and needed to be concealed, which is why he was able to lie to the police without hesitation. He even had the presence of mind to steal a police officer's pass to flee from Singapore to Malaysia. As for his capacity and motive for the crime, when police investigated Tuk Lang Hao's workplace, both his superiors and colleagues mentioned that he had previously tied up a girl with rope to intimidate her because he found her noisy and annoying. Additionally, his relationship with Hoang Na wasn't always peaceful, as there were a few occasions when he became so angry that he physically hit her. Therefore, it's not unreasonable to suspect that on that day, Hoang Na might have done something that triggered him to act violently again. After intense court proceedings, on August 27, 2005, Tuk Lang Hao was found guilty and sentenced to death. In January 2006, he filed an appeal, and the case was reviewed again, but the original sentence was upheld. However, his family could not accept the verdict and filed for clemency with the President of Singapore. After waiting for over 8 months, their efforts were in vain and the sentence was carried out on November 3, 2006. As for Hoang Na, her funeral was attended by many people who brought flowers, snacks, and her favorite Hello Kitty toys to send her off to her final resting place. But if the story ended there, we would miss a highly controversial postscript. After the case was closed, instead of fading from public attention, negative stories about Hoang Na's mother, Heng Shuing, began surfacing online. Going back to the time when Heng Shuing divorced her first husband, she had come to Singapore on a short-term visa. However, she overstayed her visa to work illegally. Eventually, she was arrested, sentenced to prison, and deported back to her home country. After serving her sentence, however, the thought of leaving behind a developed country like Singapore and returning to the rural areas of Fujian, with fewer opportunities to earn a living, was too difficult for Heng Shuing to accept. A fellow inmate reportedly advised her to burn off her fingerprints by pressing all 10 of her fingers against a red-hot iron bar, making it impossible for authorities to trace her later. When she learned that Singapore had introduced policies to attract skilled talent, she paid $8,000 Singapore dollars to a human trafficking syndicate to illegally re-enter Singapore. However, Hoang Na, having no criminal record, was still able to enter Singapore legally. After this dark chapter in Heng Shuying's past was revealed, the police immediately investigated and confirmed the story to be true. Heng Shuing was forced to return to Fujian with her daughter Hoang Na's ashes, but the story didn't end there. Rumors circulated online about Hang's mother and stepfather's circumstances after returning to Fujian, painting a very different picture than what the public had imagined. It was said that during the investigation into Hoang Na's case, many people had donated money and goods in support of the family. Allegedly, this money was used to build a 4-story mansion, complete with a large garage on a small man-made hill, as well as many other luxurious amenities. Upon learning of this, many people began to express support for Tuk Lang Hao, believing they had been wrong to side with Heng Shuing. Some even speculated that the entire incident had been orchestrated by Heng Shuing and her husband. Many criticized her for being an irresponsible mother, allowing her 8-year-old daughter to become so independent and leaving her alone in Singapore while she comfortably traveled back to China. In response to these accusations, Heng Shuing claimed that most of the donated money was used to build a proper resting place for her daughter, Hoang Na. She also mentioned that their home had only been expanded by 1 floor to provide a view of Hoang Na's gravesite. Additionally, the remaining funds were donated to improve infrastructure in their village and to support charitable organizations aiming to spread positive values to more people. However, the controversy surrounding the couple continued to escalate. But no matter what the truth may be, the fact remains that little Hang's life was tragically cut short at just 8 years old. It's a heartbreaking and unfortunate case, regardless of how the details unfold. And that's where I'll end my coverage of this case. What do you think about this case? Please share your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss it together. Goodbye. ****. On the morning of September 15, 2007, at Melbourne's train station in Australia, Passengers noticed a young Asian girl wandering alone and crying. They immediately sought assistance from station staff. During the interaction, they realized that the girl did not speak English. Initially, they thought she had been separated from her family, so they brought her to the office. Since she was wearing clothes from the children's brand Pumpkin Patch, they nicknamed her Little Pumpkin. The staff then reviewed the surveillance footage to search for the girl's relatives. However, they discovered something unusual. A middle-aged man was seen pulling a suitcase and leading Little Pumpkin into the station. He bent down to speak to her briefly, then went up the escalator and never returned. The staff concluded that Little Pumpkin had likely been abandoned by the middle-aged man and reported the incident to the police. This discovery, however, led to a shocking case that rocked the Chinese communities in both Australia and the United States. At the same time, it exposed the criminal actions of a Chinese martial arts master. Through further investigation, the police confirmed that Little Pumpkin, then 3 years old, was a New Zealand citizen, and the man who abandoned her was her father, a 53-year-old Chinese martial arts master named Na. His English name was Michael. Australian police examined flight records and found that, on September 13, 2007, 2 days before the incident, Michael and his daughter flew from Auckland, New Zealand, to Melbourne, Australia, using their New Zealand passports. On September 15, just 2 hours after abandoning his daughter at the Melbourne station, Michael boarded an international flight alone to Los Angeles, USA. His actions indicated that he had planned to abandon his 3-year-old daughter. However, a puzzling question remained. If he only intended to abandon his daughter, why didn't he do so in New Zealand? And where was the girl's mother? The Australian police passed along the information they had gathered to New Zealand authorities in hopes of locating Little Pumpkin's mother. 2 days later, on September 17, Auckland police went to Michael's house to investigate. They discovered that Little Pumpkin's mother had been missing for several days. As a result, they immediately requested a search warrant and began searching Michael's home. Later that evening, after 5 p.m., the police found a woman's body in the trunk of Michael's Honda. Upon identification, the victim was confirmed to be Michael's wife, Anna. She was wearing a nightgown with no underwear, and a pair of red panties had been discarded beside the body. In addition, a yellow tie was found wrapped around her neck. The medical examiner determined that Anna had been dead for about a week. Before her death, she had not been sexually assaulted, and the cause of death was determined to be suffocation. The yellow tie belonged to her husband. On the panties, DNA from 3 men was found, one of whom was her husband. Michael had flown with his daughter to Australia on September 13, then abandoned her and continued on to the United States. All these suspicious actions pointed to Michael as the prime suspect in the case. After entering the United States, no one knew where Michael had gone. The case immediately caused a stir in the Chinese community in New Zealand, as Michael was regarded as an influential figure within the Chinese community. He was born in 1954 in Yingkou, China, and grew up in Liaoning. From a young age, he developed a deep interest in martial arts. He began practicing martial arts at the age of 8 and later received instruction from various masters. By that time, he had gained some fame in the martial arts community in northern China. Michael later claimed to be the 6th-generation successor of the Tai Chi style. Of course, from a modern perspective, this title doesn't carry much weight. However, in that era, with the presence of many martial arts masters, the title held significant meaning. In 1983, at the age of 29, Michael claimed to have been ranked among the top 10 martial artists in China and was hailed as a master by the international martial arts community. He went on to write and publish an autobiography, declaring himself the grandmother of Tai Chi. With the reverence of his disciples, Michael opened a martial arts school to attract more students and earn tuition fees. Among his students were prominent members of society, and as a result, he enjoyed both fame and fortune. His career flourished, and during this time, Michael was able to purchase a luxury car. All of this was the result of the combined efforts of Michael and his first wife. Gradually, Michael's students began to realize that their master was just a bragger with no real combat experience. This became Michael's biggest weakness. As a result, the number of students and the revenue of his martial arts school started to decline, eventually making it unsustainable. However, Michael heard that his martial arts were highly regarded abroad, so he decided to take a risky step. In 1996, Michael immigrated to Auckland, New Zealand. At that time, he was over 40 years old and had just divorced his first wife. Michael lived in New Zealand with his daughter and opened a martial arts center there. Each year, he held several martial arts performances. He also tried to teach martial arts in the US, but ultimately, it didn't succeed. The Chinese community had mixed opinions about Michael's martial arts skills and character. Many people believed that he was all talk and had no real talent. In short, Michael always presented himself as a distinguished master, but regardless of the country, he didn't attract many students. The main reason for this was his rude, domineering personality and his strong need for control. Michael repeatedly abused his daughter, making her childhood unhappy. When he traveled to the US, he left his daughter at home without any care or responsibility. Moreover, from his previous marriage, it was clear that he often attacked his wife and children, which made his daughter feel unsafe. Once she became independent, his daughter chose to leave and never returned. During this time, Michael met a woman from China named Anan Lo. Anan Lo was born in 1980 in Changsha, Hunan. Her mother was a senior manager in a business. Initially, Anan had a very good job in China, but she later decided to further her education and study abroad. In 2002, she arrived in New Zealand at the age of 22. However, upon arrival, Anan Lo discovered that she had been deceived by a recruitment agency. Instead of enrolling in a prestigious university, she was placed in a language school. She had to pass her exams within 6 months, or she would have to return to China once her visa expired. This made it difficult for her to improve her English, especially since life in the Chinese community rarely required speaking English. After a traffic accident left her injured, the 6 months passed quickly. As her visa expiration loomed and she was unable to pass her exams, Anan Lo tried to extend her visa but was once again scammed by an agent. Most of the money she had brought with her was taken, and facing the prospect of returning home empty-handed, Anan Lo was determined to stay. The lonely and desperate young woman decided to do whatever it took to remain in the country. She began living illegally, without a stable place to stay. By October 2002, unable to afford her rent, Anan Lo searched for cheaper accommodations. It was during this time that she met Michael, a landlord offering affordable housing in Auckland. After learning about her situation, Michael told her she didn't need to pay rent. All she had to do was keep the house clean, and she could stay. Anan Lo was deeply grateful for his generosity and moved in. At the time, Michael, then 48, wasn't simply offering her a place to stay, he also wanted to pursue the young and beautiful woman, who was 26 years his junior. Surprisingly to many, Anan Lo quickly accepted Michael's romantic advances. Anan Lo was only 4 years older than Michael's daughter, and it's hard to believe this was genuine love. If Michael's martial arts school had been doing well at the time, Anan Lo likely saw a relationship with him as a way to avoid financial difficulties while studying abroad. Their relationship developed rapidly, and they began living together at the start of 2003. When they got married, Anan Lo was already pregnant. Later that same year, she gave birth to a daughter, the girl we now know as Little Pumpkin in this case. It seemed like Anan Lo had found a good man in a foreign country, but after their marriage, Anan Lo discovered that her husband was jealous and forbade her from interacting with other men. Even minor disagreements would result in Michael physically abusing her. Although her life was far from what she had imagined, without a card, Anan Lo felt she had no choice but to endure in silence. In 2006, when Michael was over 50, like many martial artists, he could not avoid the decline in physical abilities, especially since he didn't have any real skill. The martial arts club had become nothing more than a name without value. It had long ceased to provide Michael with any significant income. That same year, Anan Lo received her green card. She no longer had to rely entirely on her husband, as she now had permanent residency. This changed everything. She no longer fully obeyed her husband's orders and even refused to be intimate with him. This made Michael, already struggling with his failing career, even more frustrated and angry. He frequently used his fists against his wife, forbade her from leaving the house, and did not allow her to make friends freely. He even hid her passport and other documents. In September 2006, unable to endure the domestic abuse any longer, and Hoang Na decided to escape. She began searching for her passport but instead found a gun. She panicked and was soon discovered by Michael. As a result, she was beaten again, and he even threatened her with a knife. Despite the hardship and loss of freedom, Hoang Na never gave up on the idea of escaping. She finally took advantage of an opportunity, opened the door, and ran to a neighbor's house. After the neighbor called the police, they came and arrested Michael. In June 2007, when the police took him away, Michael was still threatening Hoang Na, saying that he would kill her. Hoang Na and her daughter were taken to a local women's shelter. The staff noticed that she had a split lip and bruises around her eyes. The mother and daughter were provided with food and shelter for a month while Hoang Na filed for a restraining order. As for Michael, he faced charges, but ultimately, Hoang Na withdrew the case. She couldn't bring herself to send Michael to jail, hoping instead that they could separate amicably. In November 2006, Hoang Na took her daughter and returned to her hometown in Changsha, Hunan Province, China, where they stayed for 4 months. While she was away, Michael began dating another woman, but the relationship was short-lived. After the breakup, Michael contacted his wife several times, promising that he would never use violence again and even offering to renew their wedding vows. This moved her. After 4 months in Changsha, Hoang Na returned to New Zealand with her daughter. At this point, the martial arts center had completely collapsed, and Michael began looking for other ways to make money. By the end of 2006, he entered the publishing business, becoming a distributor for a Chinese-language newspaper called Chinatown. However, he didn't know how to run a newspaper or conduct business. The result was a failure, leaving him with significant debts. Michael quickly filed for bankruptcy after this business failure. Michael found himself in the most difficult situation of his life. Just 3 months after Hoang Na returned to New Zealand, Michael resumed his violent behavior. He attacked and even threatened to kill her with a sword. Their daughter, crying, ran to her mother for help but was kicked aside by Michael. After reporting the incident to the police, the mother and daughter were again provided with protective services. The police confiscated Michael's passport and sword and required him to complete a course on family relationship repair. However, Hoang Na had lost hope for reconciliation and was too afraid to stay in Auckland. In June 2007, she moved with her daughter to the capital, Wellington, and began living separately. In July, she registered an account on a dating website. On her blog, on August 29th, she wrote a journal entry about a secret romance she had in Wellington. Hoang Na wrote, "He was lonely, I was lonely. 2 people burned by the fire, so everything that needed to happen, happened. We lived happily as a family for nearly 2 months. Later, after leaving Wellington," she wrote, "a week after his wife returned, I drove away from our love nest, leaving his city." This journal entry clearly indicated that she had ended a relationship with a man after some time. Michael also realized something was wrong. His wife had been away for 2 months without paying any rent. This made him furious. Michael complained to a fellow Chinese friend from his hometown in Liaoning, saying, "In my entire life, no one has ever deceived me except my wife, Hoang Na. She didn't want to live with me sincerely, she used me to gain benefits. She has no income in New Zealand, and I've had to cover all the expenses. That's the greatest resentment of my life." It was likely at that moment that the thought of murder began to form in his mind. Michael's mind. The police confirmed that the last time Hoang Na was seen was around 4 p.m. on September 11, 2007, at a children's center in the suburbs of Auckland. After that, no one knows what method Michael used to lure Hoang Na back home. On September 12th, Annan's mother called, and Michael answered the phone, telling his mother-in-law that Annan had gone to Wellington to attend a party. After Annan's death, Michael went to the local authorities and reclaimed his confiscated passport. The next day, on September 13th, he flew with his daughter to Melbourne, Australia. He then contacted a travel agency, saying he wanted to book a same-day flight to Los Angeles. The staff checked and found that the earliest available flight wasn't until September 15th, 2 days later. Initially, Michael planned to take his daughter with him as he fled to the U.S., but he quickly changed his mind, realizing that fleeing with a child would be a burden. So, Michael made the heartless decision to abandon her. After the incident, Michael's oldest daughter expressed her desire to care for her half-sister. The embassy quickly intervened and assisted in bringing Nan Le's mother from Changsha to take custody of her granddaughter and return home with her daughter's ashes. The Chinese community in New Zealand raised money to help Little Pumpkin, but her grandmother declined the donations. Her daughter's tragic fate left the grandmother feeling guilty. She had thought that sending her daughter abroad would provide a better life, but she never expected such an outcome. Due to infrequent contact, the mother was unaware of what Nan Le had endured over the years. She also knew nothing about her daughter's married life and had never even met Michael. After entering the U.S., American authorities issued a nationwide arrest warrant for Michael. At one point, he was placed on the U.S. Top 100 Most Wanted list, alongside leaders of terrorist organizations. A year later, on February 28, 2008, in College Park, a suburb of Atlanta, a Chinese restaurant chef named Wu Gen was reading the newspaper. He saw that U.S. police were offering a $10,000 reward for the capture of a fugitive named Michael. When he saw the picture, he was shocked. "Isn't that Mr. Tang who works at the restaurant?" Wu Gen recalled suspicious things about him, like how his luggage was never unpacked, as if he was ready to move at any moment. Mr. Tang was always alert while sleeping, waking up at the slightest noise. He also claimed to be from Hebei, but spoke with a different accent. Convinced this person was the fugitive, Wu immediately called for friends from Qingdao who were also living in the U.S. and told them about the situation. Among the 5 men, 3 were restaurant delivery workers, 1 was a former provincial soccer player, another was an ex-soldier, and 1 had won a wrestling medal. All of them were strong and physically fit. However, none of them spoke English, so after 3 failed attempts to explain the situation to the police, they had to take matters into their own hands. The 5 men devised a plan. The smallest of them, Wu Gen, went to alert the police while the remaining 4 prepared to apprehend Mr. Tang. That same night, they all gathered at the apartment under the pretense of going out to eat together. However, the fugitive quickly sensed something was wrong and prepared to leave. The 4 men decided to act immediately. The retired soccer player moved forward to block the fugitive, while one of the men tackled him to the ground. At the same time, the others rushed in and tied his hands and feet with leather straps. When the police arrived, the fugitive was already restrained. Inside his wallet, they found a New Zealand driver's license, confirming his identity. The international manhunt had finally come to an end. The fugitive was later extradited to New Zealand. The 5 men who captured him received a $10,000 reward, but they decided to donate the entire amount to charity. They were praised by both the media and the Chinese community for their actions. On June 2, 2009, the Auckland High Court in New Zealand officially opened the trial of Michael for the murder of his wife and the abandonment of his daughter, a case that had shocked 3 countries: New Zealand, the United States, and China. Michael was charged with murder. The trial took a long time, with over 90 witnesses involved. Michael attempted to defend himself by claiming that he was not the murderer. He stated that he only placed the body in the trunk of the car to avoid responsibility and that he fled with his daughter to escape being arrested. Forensic experts had found mixed DNA on Nan Le's underwear, with the majority belonging to Michael, but smaller DNA samples came from 2 other men. This introduced some uncertainty into the case. While Michael's DNA was found on the tie used in the crime, DNA from another man was also discovered. Michael's defense attorney presented a startling argument, claiming that the victim's blog and dating website activity showed evidence of her infidelity and provided a potential motive. They suggested that Nan Le may not have been a victim of murder but instead died during rough sexual activity with others. The attorney argued that it was possible Nan Le did not die in her own home but accidentally suffocated during intimate relations with 2 other men. The mysterious man then allegedly placed her body in Michael's trunk. Forensic experts testified that DNA could spread in certain ways. Even saliva in the air could carry DNA, and it was possible that DNA was transferred when clothes were washed together in the washing machine. They did not rule out the possibility that, before her death, the victim had close contact with another man. However, this contact might have occurred at different times, and it did not entirely exclude the possibility of Michael's involvement in the crime. One undeniable fact remained. Before Michael murdered his wife, Nan Le, their marriage was filled with violence and jealousy. After several weeks of trial, on June 20, 2009, a jury of 12 people reached a verdict. Michael was found guilty by a majority of 7 votes. On July 31st, the Auckland High Court in New Zealand sentenced Chinese national Michael in the case of murdering his wife and abandoning his daughter. He received a life sentence with a minimum of 12 years before being eligible for parole. Naturally, Michael was not pleased with this. He shouted in court that it was unfair because all the jurors were women. This was one of the reasons Michael felt the trial was unjust. For many years afterward, Michael continued to insist on his innocence. He wrote an autobiography while in prison titled I Am Not a Murderer, in which he portrayed his wife, Nan Le, in a negative light and continued to deny responsibility for her murder. By 2020, at the age of 66, Michael's attitude unexpectedly changed when he admitted to killing his wife due to her betrayal. He said, "I've always regretted it." However, it seems this change of heart came because Michael had served 12 years in prison and was seeking early release by showing remorse. But his intentions were uncovered. Psychological evaluations showed that he had a high likelihood of reoffending, and thus his parole request was denied. In life, there are stories full of tragedy and heartache, and the story of Michael and Nan Lo is one of them. From betrayal to facing death, it's a tale of crime, regret, and the fight for justice. Whether or not Michael ever finds forgiveness, his story stands as a cautionary reminder about the power of impulsive actions and the consequences they carry. Let this story remind us that, no matter what life throws our way, we always have the power to choose. Our decisions can have profound effects on the lives of others and ourselves. Think carefully before making decisions, and always hold on to kindness and respect for others. That is the true path to happiness and peace. First and foremost, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch my video. Your support means the world to me, and I cannot thank you enough for choosing to spend your valuable time here. Every single view, like, comment, and share that you give is an incredible source of motivation and encouragement. It's because of viewers like you that I am inspired to continue creating content, improving with each video, and striving to bring even more exciting, helpful, and entertaining material to this channel. Your engagement is truly the lifeblood of this community. Whether you're here for the first time or have been following me for a while, I appreciate your presence and involvement so much. Your comments and feedback are what help me grow and push myself to deliver better content with every upload. Knowing that you enjoy and find value in what I create gives me a sense of purpose and drives me to keep moving forward. I want to kindly invite you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. By doing so, you won't miss out on any of the new content that I have in store for you. I'm committed to bringing you videos that will not only entertain but also inspire, educate, and make your day a little brighter. Subscribing is a simple way to stay connected, and it ensures that we can continue this journey together. Additionally, by subscribing, you become a part of this growing community where your voice matters. I always welcome your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions, and I make it a priority to read your comments because they are invaluable to me. Whether it's ideas for new videos, feedback on what you liked or didn't like, or just sharing your thoughts, I'm here for it all. Together, we can create a space that feels positive, engaging, and full of meaningful conversations. So please, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button now. If you're already subscribed, I want to give you an extra special thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Your support, no matter how small it may seem, is making a huge difference, and I'm incredibly grateful. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll always know when I've uploaded something new. Trust me, there's a lot of exciting content on the way, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Once again, thank you so much for being here, for watching, and for supporting this channel in any way you can. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I can't wait to see what the future holds as we continue to grow together. Let's keep the momentum going, so make sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Wishing you all the best and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care and stay tuned.